The Philadelphia Eagles blow out the Minnesota Vikings on Monday Night Football to start 2-0 on the season, 24-7 win. Gino and I are going to recap it on today's edition of Locked On Eagles.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Eagles fans, to the post-game show, Locked On Eagles. I'm Louis DiBiase. He's Gino Camilleri. We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Today's episode is presented by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON. That's prizepicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. The Eagles blow out the Vikings in very 2018 NFC title-like fashion, 24-7. Gino, this could not have been a more perfect game for the Birds on both sides of the ball. We were talking about it before the show. I don't remember the last time I had this much fun watching an Eagles game. That was a complete dominating performance, and it didn't end in this catastrophic roller coaster, gut-wrenching finish. We thought it could happen a few times when the Vikings kept, blocking kicks and making red zone trips, but the defense shut things down and the offense put on a show that I have not seen since, again, like 2017, 2018, where all of that talent combined just wrecked a pretty good team.
You might look at the score of what the Bills did tonight, 41-7 over the Titans, and say that's a blowout. But looking at the scoreboard won't tell you the whole story of what happened in this game for the Philadelphia Eagles tonight. At the end of the first half, they were outgaining the Vikings nearly 3-1. They had put up over 300 yards. They were on one on offense, and it all stemmed from the quarterback position, putting the team on his back with arguably his best performance to date as a
I don't even think it's arguable,
Eagle.
Gino. I think by far his best performance of his career, college and the NFL.
And even some of the things that won't show up on the stat sheet tonight were outrageous. There was a play to Dallas Goddard in triple coverage where Jalen Hurts lays, it almost looks like a James Harden, a little floater, just put it in a bread basket for Dallas Goddard, goes up and an unbelievable play in triple coverage from the backside safety to make the play, but just truly an unbelievable throw. And Quez Watkins had a deep catch on the left side of the field where Jalen Hurts was able to roll out, moving to his left, puts this ball on a seam, delivers it to the player, ends up being a penalty. But what he did put on the stat sheet, Lou, I mean, look at it. Responsible for 3 touchdowns, 2 on the ground, 1 in the air, over 300 yards, 333 to be exact, in the air. And when you're watching that game, and Lou and I have said this multiple times in our tenure here at Locked On Eagles, are you a player that you can win because of, win with, or win in spite of? Jalen Hurts, throughout the first 2 games, has looked like a guy that you win because of, and I don't think there's any other way to argue with it with the results that he has put up the first 2 weeks.
And not just as a runner, Gino, but today it was as a passer. We said it on the show all week. Minnesota was going to dare him to stay in the pocket. They were only going to bring 4. They were going to play a lot of zone coverage. That is exactly what they did, and Jalen Hurts picked them apart. The volume was there. As we said all offseason, we want to see the efficiency there with the volume. The efficiency was there. 26 of 31 on the day. As you said, 333 yards passing, 1 touchdown, the 53-yard completion to Quez Watkins. Back-to-back weeks, he has a 50-plus yard completion. 80 yards on the ground from Sanders, I should say. 57 from Hurts and 2 touchdowns. Gino, this felt like, and again, it was a measuring stick game against a really good team, I would say talent-wise. A good defense as well on primetime football. This felt like a game where he kind of, this is a measuring stick game, kind of like Carson Wentz in 2017 against Carolina Thursday night. It had those similar vibes where this was one of those big tests, and he passed with flying colors. Started the game 10 for 10. I was blown away, man. I really hope I'm wrong. And so far through the first 2 weeks, Jalen Hurts looks like he's going to prove me wrong. I mean, he, as you said, has been a guy you're winning because of. And today you won because of him as a passer. The running was there, but I was way more impressed with what he did inside the pocket.
And the run that he made, that was his remarkable touchdown run. It came out of necessity with pressure coming down on him, and he escapes the pocket, and he takes on multiple blockers and
the guy
shows
squats
that
600 pounds, man. He showed it.
Took the words right out of my mouth, man. You can't beat athleticism when athleticism is just simply too overpowering. And when you put those two elements together with the smarts that Jalen Hurts has played with, I thought one of the areas that will never show up on a stat sheet is how he maneuvered the pocket tonight, Lou. His eyes just remained downfield.
Even when he was scrambling, Gino. A lot of times last year, he would have tucked it and ran. Today, every time he was on the move, he was keeping his eyes downfield.
And he stepped up to the left. He stepped up to the right. He maneuvered to where his blocking was, getting into space, and still allowing time for things to open up down the field. Like you said, Minnesota dropped guys into coverage all day and said, Jalen Hurts, beat us with your arm.
He did.
And did they shy away from that at all? No. And when they needed to run, they did. Miles Sanders, I thought, ran effectively today. I thought Kenny Gainwell had his spots outside of that dropped pass, which you can't attribute that interception to Jalen Hurts, in my opinion. It was right in Kenny's hands. And
I want a different stat, I think weapons should also have a stat for interceptions.
Yeah, like caused interceptions.
That shouldn't count for Jalen, because as you said, that was right off his hands. Jalen threw a perfect game, man. His ball placement and precision these first 2 weeks have been incredible, off the charts. I mean, what he did on third down again today, continued to move the chains with his arm, and it's not just on like 3rd and 5 or below. Gino, there was a 3rd and 13 early in the game. He moved the chains with his arm consistently these 2 weeks on third down, the money-making downs with his arm. He's converting. If they can throw like this the entire season with, as you mentioned, the way they can instantly, if they want to, become the best running team in football, this is a Super Bowl contender. It's one game, but it's hard to not get excited about the potential of this team if Jalen's going to do that against good teams.
I absolutely agree. Now let's walk before we run here. There's still a lot of work to do. They still have to clean up things. In the second half, they could have put them to sleep, and the offense could have taken advantage of some moments. The special teams has a lot to clean up, which we will talk about in probably the show towards the end and definitely during this week. And the defense, I thought, played nearly a perfect game, in my opinion. And when you put all of those elements together, where we were saying, what are the question marks? It was Jalen Hurts passing the ball. It was Jalen Hurts' ability to maneuver the pocket, his ability to be that guy. I thought he answered a lot of those questions tonight. Jonathan Gannon, can he figure it out as a play caller on defense, put out the right personnel, pick his spots? He isn't a guy that likes to call blitzes, but tonight really, in my mind, cemented that, okay, he knows what he is doing and he understands what he wants the identity of this defense to be. And when they play within his identity of what it should be, you saw the results tonight, Lou. The pressure got home when it needed to. Darius Slay, extend the guy tomorrow, played the best game of a defensive backfield player in Philadelphia Eagles history.
There's just so many
in my
guys
opinion,
getting involved on both sides of the ball. I cannot wait for stock up, stock down tomorrow. We're going to both want to add like 5 players.
No
to the
down
list.
outside of Michael Clay. But
and just to wrap things up with the offense real quick, the other thing I loved about Jalen's performance was everybody was involved. So Dallas Goddard led the way with 82 receiving yards on 5 catches. Devontae Smith, no catches last week. Well, today led the team in receptions with 7 for 80 yards. A.J. Brown, 5 for 69. Quez Watkins, 2 for 69. Zach Pascal, 2 for 14. Doesn't sound sexy, but he had another third down conversion this week, as he did last week. Very reliable in that way, on the same route, by the way. Everybody was involved. And that was the other thing. You can see, again, how easily this team can run the ball when they want. But when they have that many options to go to, including Quez Watkins and Devontae Smith, who had goose eggs in the reception column last week, reminding you what they can do. By the way, Devontae Smith in the slot, love that. It's hard enough to guard him, but when he has 2 sides of the field to work with, I mean, good luck. He was money on third down today as well. He reminded you who he was.
Devontae Smith ever being questioned for if he would care that he didn't get any receptions last week. I just want to revisit something that I had tweeted out after this was a conversation and a speaking point. Devontae Smith played in an offense with Jalen Waddle, Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy, John Mechie, Harris in the backfield.
Countless great running backs. Yeah.
It goes on.
He played with Calvin Ridley before that. Do you know if you're going back to his freshman year?
Look at what they did today and tell me that doesn't remind you of a team like that, where you just have so many guys and they are all selfless. Like none of them look down, distraught. They all played fantastic games because the guy distributing the ball to them trusts them all. They all have
in different ways too, man. Like they all were eating
God and AJ
areas.
Brown. Devontae Smith will eat you to death with his route running. Dallas Goddard is an uncoverable tight end at this point in his career. And Quez Watkins, fast Batman, I was
gonna say, what did Slay call him? Thick Batman,
swole
skinny Batman, and
swole Batman, skinny Batman, and fast Batman. Yes, sir. And they all ate today, man.
Absolutely. It was a loaded performance from the offense led by Jalen Hurts. That was the kind of game you felt like you're going to look back if this season goes the way we want it to and be like, that was the moment we kind of thought. Because there's moments like that each year, right? Where you look back, you're like, oh, okay, that's when we realized this team might have it. And I keep going back to 2017 because they started the season hot, but until that Thursday night game against Carolina, we still didn't really know who that team was. And for the Eagles, this is earlier in the season, but this is a good team that they haven't really beat this kind of quality opponent in this new era. And really in years, they haven't beat a team like this. Minnesota is not maybe a Super Bowl contender, but in primetime football, to go and do what they did today and handle them, it wasn't even really close. Super impressive. Gino, and a lot of that was because of the defense. We're going to get into that coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles. But first, a shout out to one of our sponsors of the day, and it's Prize Picks Daily Fantasy. It is the easiest way to play daily fantasy. Love traditional fantasy, but I'm getting my butt kicked right now. I'm 0-2 on the season, but Prize Picks is helping me win money. Here's how it works. You pick 2 to 5 players, and if they're going to go score more or less than their Prize Picks projection each and every week, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. No competing with anybody. It's just you versus the projection. Prize Picks offers projections on any sport you watch as well. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less, and they have safe and fast withdrawals. Download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, Prize Picks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter the promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. I'm Louis DiBiase. He's Gino Camilleri. This is the Locked On Eagles postgame show. The Eagles improved to 2-0 with a 24-7 win over the Minnesota Vikings. The first time they're 2-0 since 2016, Gino. They have struggled with week 2 over the last 5 years.
Broke the curse.
A lot.
Broke the curse
of
week 2, man.
Absolutely. It's been brutal. They've been 1-1.
Was the Colts game on Monday Night Football the last time they won on week 2?
That was 2014, 2016 when they beat Chicago, actually.
Okay.
Which was also, funny enough, on Monday Night Football, though. They were all on Monday Night Football, Gino. 2014,
prime time when the lights are the lights are the brightest. And the counterpoint, Lou, when you're looking at the landscape, last thing I'll say on the offense before we move to the defense, looking at the landscape of the quarterbacks in the NFC right now, you took one out that you thought maybe could have a chance to compete
with Trey Lance.
You. And not Trey Lance, with Kirk Cousins. You took him right off the list.
Okay. Yes. Yes.
We're going to beat him. Trey Lance, I mean, hope he gets healthy soon, but they have Jimmy G now. When you get more of these tests, when you play Kyler, when you play Aaron Rodgers, these are exactly the games that we were talking about. And there's not many guys in this conference I'm taking over Jalen Hurts at this current point in time,
Dak
man.
Prescott's out too right now. I mean,
it's
it is
wide open. Brother.
And if you to see Jalen do what he did tonight with that kind of opportunity, super exciting. Gino, so the only other quarterback in Eagles history that's ever had a game like today, where the quarterback throws for over 300 yards and rushes for 2 touchdowns, was Michael Vick one time in 2010 in his own Monday night blowout. We all know the game against Washington. That was the only other time somebody did what Jalen Hurts did tonight. Completely took over the game. He saw what Tua did in Baltimore and was like, I got to one-up that. He did it on Monday Night Football.
Great weekend for Alabama football.
Yeah, man, they dominated. But you know who else dominated today was the defense. And we kept laying out all these measuring sticks for Jalen Hurts, this checklist, so forth. You know what I mean? And we've done the same thing for Jonathan Gannon. And last week he got a lot of flack, and rightfully so, for the lack of, good use with his personnel up front, not enough blitzes, soft coverage. Well, today, Gino, they go up against Justin Jefferson and say, we're going to play man coverage, cover one. We're going to let our top tier cornerback trio beat you with man coverage. And did they do that? Led by Darius Slay. Kirk Cousins, 1 for 5 for 7 yards and 2 interceptions when targeting Justin Jefferson when Darius Slay was on him. Incredible the Eagles have this kind of play at corner. I know it's been a few years now they've had Slay, but it still feels surreal to me. I have this toxic mindset with the Eagles and defensive backs growing up. But here we are with an amazing trio of corners.
I don't care how old Darius Slay is currently. Pay him.
Show him
tomorrow.
the bag.
Show him the bag. I mean,
like Asante Jr. out there, man. He looked more like Asante's kid than his actual kid.
Legitimately had 6 interceptions in that game, Lou.
He dropped 3 of them.
Yeah, he had about 3 dropped interceptions. Zach McPherson had a dropped interception, which would have been the play of the game, in my opinion. Avonte Maddox leaped like 12 feet in the air to pick off Kirk Cousins in the red zone.
Yep.
And why were they able to play such good coverage, Lou? Because that defensive front, man, they might not have been after it in the first part of the game, but when they needed to bunker down and just say, Kirk Cousins, we are here and we are going to be up in your face and we are not going to allow you to make your reads. Look at what happened. Fletcher Cox, man, like, does this guy, is he going to ever be bad at football? He
1.5 sacks on the year.
Continues to age like a fine wine. And Josh Sweat, like the old and the new, it's all coming to get, like, Josh Sweat made the most athletic stunt I've seen in a long time from an Eagles defense who they haven't been that creative with their games up front in the last few seasons. And it just seems the blitzes that they are sending now, they're exotic. Yes. They're coming from multiple different angles in key spots. There's only 1, maybe 2 times where I questioned Jonathan Gannon in terms of deploying his
Hassan Riddick was out in coverage on Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, you got to check out of that no matter what. That should have been number 1 in the game plan. If we get trips and our number 3 has to cover Justin Jefferson, we got to check out of this.
But you're right, though. Gino, they blitzed the fewest amount of times last week in the entire NFL. This week,
they're like
Gannon
third lowest in the league, if I'm not
third
mistaken.
Lowest all of last year. Yeah. And so Gannon dialed them up at the right times today on 3rd down. And I love that he played man coverage because, Gino, this team, yes, the majority of the NFL, they're going to play zone like 90% of the time. But this Eagles defense is built to make plays in man coverage. You have James Bradbury, who had another good day today. Can't tackle to save his life, but in coverage, he's been great. Avonte Maddox, as you mentioned, made that huge pick. Darius Slay is a top 5 corner in the NFL. Let these guys cook. I mean, and talk about the value, Gino, of those interceptions was big too. The Eagles have really not been a turnover-centric defense in quite some time, but today they came up huge because although it was 24/7, this game felt like it was in the Eagles' control the entire time. That blocked field goal, the interception off Kenny Gainwell's hands. The Vikings had 3 red zone trips to get back into this football game, only down by 17, and Kirk threw all 3 of those picks in the red zone. That was huge.
When have we seen a defense that was as good in the red zone as we have seen in this game? I think back to 2017 with that bend don't break defense that just felt every time they would allow 60, 70-yard drives. But then they got into the red zone and they just were elite. I mean, going to the Atlanta Falcons game in the playoffs, I mean, 4th and goal, they hold them 4 consecutive times. I haven't been that confident that a team wasn't going to score when they got in the red area in a long, long time. Hats off to everybody in that room. Jonathan Gannon has gotten a lot of slack, but he's building the identity. He finally has his guys. He can get these guys into this chessboard, which he really began to deploy today. The corners played great. The safety, Marcus Epps, this guy hits like a freaking rocket. He comes downhill so vicious, and they have so many sure tacklers on the back end now. Kaiser White, TJ Edwards hasn't missed a tackle in 15 seasons. And
by the way, made a couple big plays in coverage again today on 3rd and 2, man on man. Irv Smith Jr. Edwards has come a long way as a coverage linebacker too.
I mean, you look at TJ Edwards and what he has done for this team and his ability to just shore up everything that is spilling over from the defensive line, which the defensive line, they started to come around at the end of the game, and it wasn't just against the pass when they were hitting home. I mean, there was a couple times against the run where they just weren't even giving Minnesota an inch. They tried to run that screen. Hassan Riddick blows that thing up from the get-go, and Delvin Cook right off the bat, his first carry of the game, they're just limiting his yards on the ground, and that's a big win over last week. Limiting yards on the ground. The tackling, although it wasn't perfect, looked much better than it did. Turnovers have come into play. They were getting sacks. They were getting fumbles. They were getting coverage on the back end. They were getting pressure. That's all you can ask from a defense. And allowing 7 points in the National Football League to a team that just played the Green Bay Packers and took it to them pretty handedly, to see your defensive coordinator turn around and do what the Green Bay Packers couldn't do last week with a player in Jair Alexander who's in that conversation as well. Hats off to JG for making sure that he found a way to keep Darius Slay on Justin Jefferson.
And we said it all week. The Packers made a mistake playing such heavy zone coverage. Jair Alexander was barely ever on JJ. And this week, Gannon saw that and said, no, Darius Slay is going to cover Justin Jefferson the entire game. They neutralized the Vikings' two best players, completely took him out of the game. Delvin Cook was a non-factor. Justin Jefferson couldn't do anything today.
Was Adam Thielen there? Was he in
that's
the game?
The thing. Well, and even the one play he finally had a good look, almost scoring that touchdown, Maddox read the pick the entire way. Edwards was on Thielen one-on-one. I'm like, oh no, this could be bad. But Maddox read that, dropped back, and made that pick. Super impressive. Yeah, the overall, the game plan on defense was masterful. And if Jalen Hurts didn't completely dominate this football game, that would be the major talk of the city tomorrow and throughout the week. And it certainly will be, because as you mentioned, that's a good offense that made it rain on a good Packers defense. But the offense was just so good on through the air and on the ground that it's going to be hard to not talk about that a lot throughout the week. But stock up, stock down tomorrow is going to be a whole lot of fun. We're going to wrap up the post-game show, though, coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles. The Eagles take it 24-7 over the Minnesota Vikings on Monday Night Football. And guys, today's show is sponsored by Turo. It's the world's largest car-sharing marketplace. With Turo, you can book any car you want, wherever you want it, from a community of local hosts. Browse a huge selection of vehicles for just about any occasion or budget across the U.S., Canada, and the UK. Book a spacious SUV or minivan for a family road trip. Get a classic or luxury car for a special event, birthday, or holiday. Find affordable economy cars if you're on a budget and just need to get from A to B. Test drive that new electric vehicle to, see if you've had your eyes on it and it'll fit your everyday life. Many Turo hosts can even deliver the car right to you. Every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms and conditions and exclusions apply. Ditch boring rental cars and find your drive at Turo.com. All right, Eagles fans, we're wrapping up this Monday night edition of the show. Locked On Eagles, the postgame show. The Eagles take it 24-7. They're 2-0 for the first time since 2016. And, Gino, the best feeling, the best part of this win, not that it was just a complete, utter dominant performance on both sides of the football. And it was great to see your quarterback look like an MVP for the first time since, I don't know, that was the best quarterback performance since like Nick Foles against Houston in 2018, most likely, or at least that the link has seen. But I think the other part that I really like is that this was a good Minnesota Vikings team. And yeah, are they a Super Bowl contender, as we mentioned earlier? Probably not, although the NFC is wide open. They haven't had a quality win like this on this kind of stage since, I don't know, 2019 Thursday night against Green Bay, week 4. Because even the 2020 game against New Orleans, yeah, they had won 9 straight, but in Jalen Hurts' first game, it was Taysom Hill. So even that game was like, it's hard to really put a lot of stock into that without Drew Brees. It's been probably 3 years since they've had a win like this. And that's a good feeling because they've had the expectations all offseason, but we needed to see this kind of game first to really buy in.
You had referenced that Panthers game in 2017, and I think it's a very similar building block of where you should go with the rest of your season. You pick up one of these wins against I would say, middling NFC team that has aspirations for the playoffs. It's
probably in your tier, or was considered in your tier.
Was considered in your tier. But the way that Thursday night game went against the Panthers, that thing went down to the wire. Tonight, the Philadelphia Eagles dominated, Lou, for 4 quarters. in both phases. When's the last time we could say that happened?
Right, that complete where neither unit really lets things slip away.
2017 NFC Championship game, probably.
Yeah, I couldn't even. I'm trying to like go through against like a good team, especially where they handled things like that. It has not been probably since the Super Bowl season. Yeah, 100%.
I think that tonight is another one of those things where you say this is the standard. This is where we continue to build from.
It's the ceiling.
Yeah. I mean, last week in Detroit, we have now come to realize that Detroit might be a better team than we had thought. You also referenced 2016 being the last time that the Eagles started 2-0. Well, they started 3-0 that year as well when they took on 3 opponents, and the third one was the Pittsburgh Steelers, which was probably one of the better wins that they've had. But those first 2 games were against the Browns and the Bears. These first 2 games were exponentially more difficult in terms of who they had to play. This Detroit Lions team seems to be for real. They've scored the 3rd most amount of points in football. Philadelphia Eagles are right with them, and Kansas City. Like, they're scoring points. But today, what did they do? They didn't allow points. And that's what wins you championships, man. Defense really does, because when you can say, okay, the offense hasn't put together a drive in the second half and we have to step up to the plate. Well, your defense did it multiple different times in multiple different fashions. I mean, if it's the strip sack from Fletcher Cox, if it's the turnover from Darius Slay picking off Justin Jefferson in the end zone. I mean, they just did it in multiple different ways with multiple different players. And nobody, I would say, outside of the quarterback, if you looked at the other 21 positions, everybody was on a level playing field. I don't think anybody let the team down, and I don't think anybody really carried the weight. It was a collective team effort from everybody involved, and that's what you want to see. You don't want to see these games where A.J. Brown does go off for 154 yards. Like, yeah, that's fantastic, but you want to see them spread it out. They have playmakers. That's only going to open up this offensive playbook even more. That's only going to make your defense play with more confidence. And when that all comes together, that's something that we haven't seen in maybe a decade plus.
It just felt like they could do everything.
Offense and elite defense.
Where you have an offense where you can literally do anything you want. You want a deep threat, you got Quez Watkins. You want the possession overall stars, you have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Oh, you have a star tight end too that's top 5 in the league. And then if you go light in the box, we have Jalen Hurts running it down your throat, Miles Sanders as well, Boston Scott, Kenny Gainwell, the best offensive line in football. You just saw the ceiling today of complete dominance, and that's super exciting. And yeah, I would say the next few weeks are probably easier. The Commanders is going to be a tough test, but I think it's an easier matchup than Minnesota was this week. Jacksonville coming to town. You know, these are the revenge games for Wentz and Doug, but those rosters I don't think are as strong as the last 2 you played. And you got Arizona, Dallas with Cooper Rush. The Eagles could get on a run here, Gino, kind of like, and I don't want to keep comparing them to the Super Bowl season, but
that's the standard. We have to.
Right. Yeah, with this roster, you should want that. That should be
that's the expectation that we wanted to get back to.
And if they look like this, we're going to raise that bar even higher than what we had all offseason, because now we're seeing them. We always said in the offseason, on paper. Well, now they're doing it on the field. They're showing that ceiling. Now you know they have it in them. It's going to raise it even more. So it's going to be exciting to see if they can keep this rolling, because, man, that was a complete perfect performance against Minnesota tonight. 24-7 win. We'll be back tomorrow for Stock Up, Stock Down, and we'll continue to recap it all. And then we move quickly over to Eagles Commanders, which is this Sunday at 1 o'clock. Subscribe to Locked On Eagles on all podcast platforms, free and available on YouTube as well. And hit us up on Twitter at Locked On Birds, at DiBiase, LOE, and at GC24_football. Once again, the Eagles take it 24-7 over the Minnesota Vikings. They are 2-0 on the year. Thanks so much for making the Locked On Eagles postgame show your first listen and making LOE your first listen each and every day. Make sure your second listen is the Peacock and Williamson NFL show. Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson give you the expert NFL analysis in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get your shows. For Gino Camilleri, I'm Lou DiBiase signing off. As always, thank you for downloading. Thank you for watching and listening. And let's go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.